What time is it? Let me check my watch. Oh, it's Bone-o'clock. In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie Schwartz.
And I'm Katelyn Hart. Hi, everyone. How are you?
How art thou?
Yeah, really, think about it. How are you doing?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Well, I hope that improves.
You can always improve something.
But one thing that I would say is pretty great is the fact that it's June and the fact that it's Pride Month.
Yes, very exciting. Happy Pride Month, Soph.
Thank you. Happy Pride Month to one of my most favorite allies.
Aw.
It was fun in planning this episode. Katelyn was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, what do you want to do? She was like, well, you're the queer one. And I was like, that's right. So I'm running the show.
That's right. I have to take a step back. It's only right.
Well, I challenged Katelyn to find some fun queer story to share with us. And I have some fun stuff to share with us. One thing we were just going to kind of stay away from for this episode because, you know, as a queer person and knowing queer history, it's violent and it's full of bones-related things that are hate crimes and discrimination and murders of innocent Black trans women and violence against trans people in general. I think Pride Month is a time to see that and to recognize the importance that we all need to do better and we all need to support the queer community any way that we can. And one of the ways I feel like we can support the queer community is that we can uphold stories of queer successes or stories of queer people living their lives truly, because I feel like that's something that's really missing all year round when it's not Pride Month. You know, I feel like there's this trope of queer people dying tragically, but that's not always the case. There are wonderful successes, and we wanted to highlight positive things about queerness relating to bones, and that's what we're going to try to do today.
Yeah, well said, Soph. Yeah. When I started thinking about doing research, I was like, well, my go-to is usually a murder. And
yeah,
just like Sophie said, Pride Month is a time for celebration. We have to hold those stories in our hearts because they did happen. Queer and trans people have been hurt and killed in the past and still are. It's ongoing.
Yeah.
Should we just dive right in?
I think so. I think we need to start the celebration.
Yes. I'm going to go first. Sophie said it was okay. I didn't demand to go first.
I let Katelyn go first.
Please, yes. So today I'm going to tell you the story of a badass lesbian woman. This is the story of Dr. Sara Josephine Baker.
Ooh. I don't know this lady.
Yeah, for me, I think I've heard the name in passing, but once I did a deep dive, anyway, you're going to see. I'm really excited about this topic. If I go long, sorry, you can cut some of it out, but she's a fascinating person.
Please. I think when you said part of her name is Josephine Baker, which I'm pretty sure is the name of a Black burlesque performer from the 1920s.
Yes, you're right. This not to be confused with the singer or burlesque dancer. I can't remember.
She's both, I believe. She can sing, she can dance,
yeah.
she can do it all, and she wears bananas. Anyway.
No,
look up the banana dress.
Maybe we need to look up, maybe I'll post a picture of the banana dress because I haven't seen that. Okay. So Sara Josephine Baker was born in 1873 in Poughkeepsie, which is in New York. I didn't know that.
It's a great name.
It is. I'm from Poughkeepsie. No, I don't know. What's the Poughkeepsie accent?
It's probably more nor'easter.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of accent work that I do is bad. So
I love your accents.
I try, but anyway. Oh, I should have said my sources were an article from them.us, an article from the BBC, and then an article from the National Center for Biotechnology Information Journal. Yes.
Ooh.
So we're in Poughkeepsie in 1873. Sarah's parents are Daniel Mosher Baker, who is a lawyer, and Jenny Harwood Brown. She is an interesting character. She was one of the first graduates of Vassar College. So Sarah's mother was one of the first graduates of Vassar College. Yeah. Sarah always was raised with the expectation that she would also go to Vassar. But she wrote an autobiography. It's called Fighting for Life. She said that she had a happy childhood. She had a good relationship with her mom and dad. But suddenly, so she's got these plans that she's going to go to Vassar. But I guess suddenly within a few months of each other, her father and brother died suddenly and unexpectedly. So she's, I guess, newly responsible for all of her family's assets and everything. So it says, my source said that she gave up a scholarship and applied to medical school instead. So I don't know exactly what her initial plan was, but medical school was maybe not in the cards until she had this horrible accident in her family.
Oh, God.
Just keep that in mind as you hear all the shit she's going to accomplish. So now she's the one that I guess has to make money for her family. So she goes to medical school in 1894. So she goes to the Women's Medical College of the New York Infirmary, which was originally founded by a pair of sisters, the Blackwell sisters, Elizabeth and Emily, who I don't know jack shit about, but I think might be a topic for a future episode.
Well, I don't know. When you come into the room like, hello, we are the Blackwood sisters, I turn around.
Yeah.
I'm like, hello.
But still.
Blackwell, yeah. Either or.
The Blackwell sisters. Anyone? Hamilton?
Yes.
Okay. So she graduates medical school in 1898. Yay, congratulations, grads.
Dads and grads.
She gets an internship at the New England Hospital for Women and Children, which is in Boston. And she works at an outpatient clinic. Hey, me too. Serving, no, not at all the same thing. So she is serving some of Boston's like poorest residents.
And you're blasting old people's eyes back into shape.
Yeah, and I'm not even doing it personally. I'm just helping with the paperwork and stuff.
I thought you did all the surgery.
No. Well. So, guess what? When Sarah graduated, female doctors weren't allowed to work in hospitals.
Boo.
I know.
Boo.
Yeah, so she I guess had to go somewhere else, so she negotiated this internship at this outpatient clinic.
Wait, so there could be women doctors, but they could not work in hospitals?
That's what my sources said. This was
That's wild.
This is the early days of women in medicine, truly.
Yeah.
You know, other than being nurses, I guess, because they were allowed to be nurses probably long before this. I don't know. Look that up. Maybe.
I'll ask my mom.
Yeah, please ask your mom. Okay, so at this clinic, she does start to see a connection between poverty and bad health. And this just, quote, led her to a commitment to social medicine that would shape the rest of her career. So one of the things she was doing particularly a lot was delivering babies in homes because she couldn't go to the fucking hospital.
Yeah.
And I don't think babies were born in hospitals very much at this time.
Probably not.
Mostly, if they could, they were born at home. At least that's what it was on Call the Midwife.
Very valid source. Call the midwife.
Sorry, Call the Midwife is in a different country, in a different time period. I don't know what I'm fucking talking about. Anyway, she's delivering babies in people's homes, and she sees their living conditions. And mostly this is tenement housing, so it's crowded, neglected, and nasty. But there was no other place for these poor working class people to raise their children in.
Yeah.
So about a year after her graduation, she opens a private practice in New York with another lady doctor, but they only made about $185 in the first year. Yeah.
Is that a lot? What's I? Fuck.
Bless you.
Thank you. That took me over like a demon.
I know, your whole body.
To expel it. Sorry. God, it took my thought with it too. What was I gonna say? Was $185 a year though? That's probably not good.
I don't think it was great for two people too. She didn't get it all. They had to split it.
That's trash.
Yeah. I don't think
sorry,
that could
ladies.
work. So
ladies, I'm sorry.
So obviously they had to work elsewhere. So they also worked as medical examiners for the New York Life Insurance Company, which I don't know, that would probably be interesting. Mm-hmm. This is actually one of the first instances of women doctors working in the insurance industry. So cool.
Hey.
Sara also works as a medical inspector for the city. So she is about to meet a bunch of people, bit higher ups in the health department at this point. So we're almost at 1900. We're basically there.
They're rubbing elbows because they don't like to shake hands.
Right, they're doctors.
They're people.
So, guess what?
What?
Sara really, really hated the health department.
Oh no.
So she said, quote, "It reeked of negligence and stale tobacco and slacking."
Hey, burn! Oh my God.
To continue, "In honest moments, I could not help feeling that my own job was a minor racket too, for even if I did work at it, I knew that I was accomplishing no good whatsoever."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the health department at this time was no good. So it seems like their main goal was having these health department officials on the payroll. At least that's what Sara thought. So one of Sara's tasks, tasks from the health department was she was supposed to go to schools and to tenements and report back on sick infants and sick children. And this was something that there were a bunch of people in the health department that were supposed to be doing. But in her autobiography, she recalls this conversation with a different inspector. And he is like, "Oh, so did you go into the schools and the tenements and report sick infants?" And she was like, yeah. And he said, quote, "But if we don't report any sick babies and you go ahead and report shoals of them, it makes our reports look pretty bad."
Yeah, it does. It really does do that.
So there was corruption in the health department. People just there was no accountability for all these sick and dying children and babies at this time. Yeah. And so Dr. Baker was just like, I just want to do my job. Like, I just want to help people. And there are all these dudes basically getting in my way about this.
And it's fucked that they are lying, fudging their numbers, and there's no help going to these babies. Right.
While these people who work in an office and wear suits and just just make decisions all day that affect the lives of thousands of people that are in cramped, unsanitary, disgusting conditions, and they're just dying left and right. And babies in particular were just, you were lucky to stay alive. Like, you were lucky to survive infancy. So this is like the last straw for her. So remember, she just really quickly, she didn't even want to go into medicine initially.
Yeah.
And then she has all these experiences. She sees these connections between poverty and all of these deaths. And so she's like, fuck you guys. I'm staying in this field. And she was like a pioneer in public health, which is something that we now know of. You can get a degree in it. You can do all you can do all these things with it. But she was one of the first.
My mom has a doctorate in public health.
Hey, what's up, Suzanne?
Sup, Suzanne?
Shout out to public health. Okay.
Health for the people.
So, Sara had a masculine style of dress. She wore tailored suits and neckties. Some people say that that's because she was downplaying being a woman in a largely male profession. Others say it was part of her gender presentation. You know, I think both can be true, both can be false. We don't know.
It's hard because I'm assuming we cannot ask her.
No. She graduated medical school in 1898. She is dead now.
She could use her beautiful gay power to live forever. Some people can do that.
Okay. She was also a suffragette and a feminist, and she was with her female life partner from 1920 until she died in 1945. Her partner was a writer named Ida Wiley.
That's an amazing name.
I know.
Ida Wiley.
I think she had some success. I think she wrote films as well, maybe. They were part of a group of 100 women in what was called the Heterodoxy Club. And this was, quote, a radical discussion group where Baker was known as Dr. Joe.
Ooh.
So it sounds like she went by Joe or Dr. Joe, so I'm going to call her that from now on.
I love that. Dr. Joe. Hell yeah.
So this club, Heterodoxy, was, quote, a bi-weekly luncheon discussion club of free-thinking and free-spirited women, of whom perhaps a quarter were lesbian or bisexual.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Another thing I think you'll like in particular, she kind of went by Joe because she was modeling herself off of Joe in Little Women.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That's
she
amazing.
was tough. She wanted to be tough. And
she kicked ass.
Yeah. So this was where she drew some of her inspiration for how she was going to be for the rest of her life.
That's so cool because I feel like, nowadays I feel like people can very much relate to like, oh, I'm going to take a little inspiration from this character that I like from this show or from this, series or whatever. And people have been doing that for ages.
For a very long time. Yeah. Books are powerful. We know this.
Books are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Give books a chance.
Read a book, will you? I say to myself also. Okay, so we're up to 1907, and Dr. Joe is appointed Assistant Commissioner of Health, which is a big deal. She's managing smallpox vaccination programs and, a common theme, sanitation issues. So we're going to pause on Dr. Joe for 1 second, and I'm going to tell you a story within a story here.
Welcome to Katelyn's podcast within a podcast.
It's going to be quick because I think most of our listeners, I know you know this story, and I think most of our listeners might know this story too. So what's going on in New York in 1907? There's an outbreak of Salmonella typhi, and it infects 3,000 New Yorkers. This disease, Salmonella, has a 10% mortality rate, and the main cause of this outbreak was Irish immigrant chef extraordinaire Mary Mallon, also known as Typhoid Mary.
Here she comes. She's back again. She won't wash her hands.
Yeah. Typhoid Mary is an interesting, complicated historical figure. I think we could do a whole episode on Typhoid Mary, so I'm really just going to kind of go through this quickly because Dr. Joe was instrumental in identifying her as the source of the epidemic. And
my God.
She was the one that that tested her initially. And apparently she went to her house and some sources say Mary eluded them for 5 hours. Some say 2 days. I don't know what it was. But She tried to stab Dr. Joe with a fork. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah. So here's Dr. Joe's words. Quote, I tried to explain to her that I only wanted the specimens and that then she could go back home. She again refused, and I told the policeman to pick her up and put her in the ambulance.
Pick that bitch up.
Yeah. Pick her up.
We gotta get some poop.
3,000 people are infected, and it has a 10% mortality rate. That's bad.
Yeah, 10% sounds low, but it's very high when we're talking about death.
Right. And COVID also has taught us that, like, mortality rate is catastrophic Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's not bring it down. It's already down. So, of course, Typhoid Mary tests positive for typhoid. And is forced to quarantine because she refuses to wash her hands or isolate or take any kind of steps to stop the spread of typhoid.
God damn it, Mary, wash your fucking hands. Mary, look at me. No, put down the fork. Put down the fork. Stop it.
I'm serious. Yeah. So she spends 2 years on North Brother Island in New York. Oh, in the East River, near Rikers Island. And then, in 1910, she convinces a new health commissioner, so Dr. Joe had nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Convinces this new health commissioner to let her out. And she causes another outbreak after going back to work as a cook, never washing her hands, and... my source says she infected at least 25 people in the 3 months that she was working, and she eluded the health department for 5 years.
Mary! Oh, Mary!
They did get her again, though, and this is sad. They put her back in isolation on North Brother Island, and she was there for 23 years until she died.
I'm laughing because that's horrible.
It's horrible. But there she is. That's Typhoid Mary. Maybe this is where we've heard Dr. Joe's name. I don't know.
Possibly,
okay.
Yeah.
Now
we love Typhoid Mary.
We love her. Okay, so now Typhoid Mary, take a seat. Dr. Joe, stand back up. So we're in about 1908 now. Dr. Joe has been able to invest all her attention in her main, favorite subject, taking care of children. She's appointed director of the Bureau of Child Hygiene, which was formed by the health department in New York. And the main goal was to tackle infant mortality. And this is the first kind of organization of its kind in the United States. And of course, she's the first woman to do anything like this.
Wow.
Her authority does go over all of New York, but her main focus was Hell's Kitchen. Which is also my favorite Gordon Ramsay show right now.
I was going to say, did Dr. Gordon help her get people in line?
So she did a lot of really amazing things. This is what she's mostly known for. She developed a bunch of programs for immigrants that were living in these horrible tenement housing neighborhoods. She formed the Little Mothers League, which trained little kids how to take care of their baby siblings while their parents were at work. Yeah.
That's genius, but very sad.
Sad that it was necessary, but holy shit, why didn't anybody think of this sooner? Amazing. Yeah. They also set up these clean milk stations around the city because that was a big problem. Infants weren't drinking clean milk because nobody was clean or healthy. So she also did some midwife training and created policies that really had a big impact on women dying in childbirth and also infant mortality. Eventually, 35 states are going to implement versions of this in their health departments. Yep. But she was not perfect. She was not perfect. She did have some, none of us are. She did have some nasty stereotypes about the immigrant communities that she was serving. Ugh. Particularly, I think I didn't copy and paste them because I was just I don't need to read these out loud. But I think she had nasty things to say about the Irish and the Russian Jews, particularly.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ew.
Close to the heart.
Yeah, exactly. These stereotypes that she held and that probably a lot of people in health department positions held did, in fact, hamper trust in public health. So these communities that she was sort of trying to serve, but also she didn't really understand them or try to. This quote sums it up well, I think. Quote, "For communities so frequently maligned and stereotyped, trust was not easily given just because someone with Baker's authority asked for it."
Yeah.
You know, like...
I think there's a lot of communities, you know, in America and throughout America's history that the health department or, you know, science or doctors have really wronged in a significant and horrific way. So I feel like they had their reasons.
Yes, yeah. And some of them were from countries where you couldn't trust people in positions of power,
definitely.
Of course. So, like, who are these people to tell me how to live my life and raise my children, you know? So it's a complicated situation. And what Dr. Joan never really seemed to understand is that it wasn't that they were ignoring her advice. It's that they maybe didn't understand it very well. Maybe she didn't explain it in a way that they could understand. So she also didn't really seem to grasp that these people often didn't have a lot of control over their own lives and their circumstances, you know?
Yeah.
They didn't choose to live in tenement housing. Nobody does.
No.
So,
you know.
Yeah. So I just put that out there because she wasn't a perfect person and it's important to see all sides. So,
yeah, well put.
But by 1911, the infant death rate in the entire city dropped by 40%.
Damn.
So she
That's
took
a
over.
Real impact.
Yeah, she started doing this in about 1908, 1909, and by 1911, she's made a 40% decrease in the infant mortality in the city. I mean, it wasn't just her, but you know what I mean? Her policies, and she helped a lot.
Yeah.
This is a crazy story. So in 1915, she accidentally, started helping out on this experiment. There was a hospital for abandoned babies on Randall Island that the health department opened, I guess. And they were getting really good medical care, but half of the infants died and nobody could figure out why. And Dr. Joe sent the babies to be cared for by mothers on the Lower East Side. And when these babies got affection and they were also clean and given good milk and all that stuff, the death rate of the babies was cut in half.
Damn. Well,
so
it's important to care for babies.
Yeah. And then jumping ahead a little bit, by 1923, New York had the lowest infant mortality rate compared to any major city in the U.S. or Europe. And like I said, ultimately 35 states modeled health programs after this one.
Wow, that's insane, the amount of change she was able to impact, you know?
Yeah. And she's not done, bitch.
Oh, shit.
So
I was gonna sit down and she came up behind me and was like, "No, you fucking don't. Stand back up."
Got a little more for you here. So she was a supporter of the Shepard-Towner Act, which was a bill in Congress set to create a nationwide program that would, quote, provide federal funding for maternal and infant care, replementing some of the New York City programs on a massive scale. Sounds great, right? The American Medical Association didn't think so.
What?
I know. This is crazy. I had to tell you this. Because a doctor that was representing the AMA said, quote, "We oppose this bill because if you're going to save the lives of all these women and children at the public expense, what inducement will there be for young men to study medicine?"
What?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Isn't that insane?
Okay, so that is insane. Okay, so is he implying the main function of medicine is to stop the deaths of women and children? Buddy, disease. Buddy, injuries. Buddy, you are bad at your job, I think, that you are.
He's bad at his job. He doesn't understand. I mean, I think this was a time in medicine where preventative care wasn't really a thing yet. Everybody was focused on the treatment and you're diagnosed with this disease. Here's how we're going to treat it. But nobody was thinking about, obviously vitamins weren't a thing, shit like that. But yeah, to think that the health of infants and mothers and children is less important than young men getting into medicine.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
is so
ugh.
And you claim to be a doctor? Like, I can't even. I didn't write down his name because I don't care, but if I knew his name, I'd spit on his grave.
Well, I would come with you and do it too.
Because that's not a good thing to say. One other, I'm wrapping up. One other little thing though. In 1915, the dean at the New York University Medical School asks Dr. Joe to teach a course on child hygiene because there's a newly formed Doctor of Public Health degree and they need teachers. But Dr. Joe had a little bit of a problem with that because women weren't allowed to be in the program.
Ooh, now that's a sticky wicket.
Yeah, so she was like, I'm not going to go in there and teach if women can't be taught by me or I couldn't take the class, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The dean couldn't find anybody else, so he was like, all right, fuck, we'll let women in the fucking doctorate program. And then Dr. Joe was able to teach the course, and then she enrolled in the program. And she became the first woman to earn a doctorate in public health.
Wow.
So in her spare time, when she wasn't doing all of this shit, she was a writer. She published hundreds of journals and newspaper articles on public health. She had 5 books. She also founded the American Child Hygiene Association. She was the president of the Women's Medical Association in 1935. Like I said, she was able to retire in 1923. Actually, I don't know that I said that. Yeah, once 35 states had modeled their programs after her, she was like, yeah, I think I can retire from this. So then she spends the last years of her life on a farm in New Jersey with her partner, Ida, and their lady friend, Dr. Louise Pierce. Ida said in her autobiography, quote, they lived amicably and even gaily together, even if it was an odd phenomenon. Yeah,
Aww.
So take what... Yeah.
Sure they did.
That can mean anything we want. It's none of our business. So, of course, we all have to go sometime. Dr. Joe died of cancer in 1945. And just to sum up, what did we learn from Dr. Joe's life? A, I'm inspired by her, and she accomplished so much in her life, had some views about immigrants that maybe aren't so savory. But one of my sources summed it up best when they said, quote, while some of her forceful methods are better not replicated, her advocacy and her focus on public education are what we should encourage.
Yeah, I think that's the core of it, is that she was not a perfect person and held some gross thoughts about people, but she did, it sounds like she worked pretty tirelessly to improve public health in the city for children especially.
Yeah. She didn't understand some of the communities she was serving, but she still tried to serve them.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a fascinating woman.
Yeah, that's Dr. Joe, the badass lady doctor from Poughkeepsie.
Yeah. Well, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Well, I guess it's time for me.
Please.
So I have a bit of a surprise for you.
What?
You were lamenting to me that we would not have a Bone-anza this month.
That's right.
Well, you're wrong. Because I have brought you a mini queer archaeology Bone-anza.
I love it. I love you. I can't wait.
Hit the music. Bone-anza.
Thank you. Bone-anza. Thank you.
Bone-anza.
Count it. Bone-anza. Thank you. Bone-anza.
Okay, so I told you that I really was interested in queer archaeology because, archaeologists tend to interpret things through the lens is their lived experience. So, elements of queerness are not always represented in archaeology because that's not the archaeologist's experience. I was looking at an article on the Museum of London Archaeology blog. They have a blog.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, check out our website.
Yeah, that's kind of a blog.
Yeah, but this article, this blog post was written by Cecilia Levernato Francis, and the title is Queering the Archaeological Record, Gender Identities in 5th through 7th Century Burial.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. And then my source for this tiny section is that blog post, which I'll have the link to. Katelyn will put on the sources. Hey, future Sophie here. I just wanted to, before we get into this section, I wanted to make a couple distinctions on the topics of sex and gender. Sex usually refers to physical characteristics between people who are male, female, or intersex. These are characteristics that are based on physiological characteristics, and this can be the same or completely different than a person's gender, which is how they identify. And gender identities are broad and are not confined within just male or female and can change within a person's life. So with that, enjoy this little mini queer bonanza. So like I was saying, in archaeology, determining gender of remains tends to be done through skeletal markers and usually is very binary of the quote-unquote biological sexes of male and female. So we tend to think about these individuals as either one or the other, and one of the ways we determine someone's gender when we're trying to look at them in an archaeological sense through skeletal markers, but also through grave goods, which are one of my favorite things. Mm-hmm. I love knowing what someone's buried with. What did you choose to take with you into the afterlife? And I know I have some things that I want plopped in my coffin before I go. Haven't made a list yet, so don't come and ask me.
No, but make your list and then I'll put it somewhere safe.
Okay, and you make your list and I'll put it somewhere safe.
Perfect. It's a plan.
That's a plan. So when we look at these grave goods, when we find remains that have them, Western archaeology tends to look at it through a Western modern lens. And so we have to kind of challenge these assumptions when we get remains that don't fit the bill of what we might say, this is a male grave, this is a female grave. Like, I think she did a study of these burials that really, like, counteracts that. So she said to kind of prove her thesis, she looked at burials from the 5th and 7th century where skeletons of one sex, in quotes, was buried with objects, grave goods that were usually associated with, what people might assume is the opposite sex. So, for example, we have a skeleton that is presumed male buried with jewelry or domestic goods, and a skeleton that's presumed female buried with weaponry and armor. So it's interesting because previous studies had really taken these graves and thought, well, they're anomalies. This is just a random person who's buried with, maybe this chick liked axes. I don't know. But the more anomalies you have become a pattern,
I'm sorry. Your headstone is going to read, this chick loved axes.
Hell yeah! Yes! Under my name, Sophie Sonia Schwartz, this chick loved axes.
Oh my god. You do, though. You do.
I do love axes. I really do. Whoa. Are you okay?
All of my stuff is jumping off the walls of my apartment.
I think
it wants to leave. Yeah, stuff fell down in my shower. I'm sorry. You can cut that out.
Scared the shit out of me. So grave goods, as we understand, are things that were important to somebody's life. So that's why they're so integral in identifying or possibly guessing at the gender of someone who is thousands of years deceased. Okay, so the graves that she looked at are from cemeteries that are all from the 5th and 7th century. And she picked one individual. This skeleton had all the skeletal markers of someone who was biologically male, but was buried with almost 40 beads, 2 brooches, and other objects that are associated with kind of feminine power and domesticity. And these items were usually found stereotypically female graves of the area. So having these things in their graves would suggest different like political ideas and associations that are distinct to women. So from this person's grave goods, we might assume that they held a more feminine role in their society. So basically what I want to talk about in this whole section is challenging assumptions of gender and sexuality when we do archaeology. And there's a really great quote from the author of this blog that says, quote, "I think the most important lesson from my work is that we need to change our methods of interpreting the past so as we allow for this kind of variability. We often use archaeological evidence to make statements about what life was like for whole groups of people, countries, cities, or villages." So going on with her quote, this is kind of the part that I really wanted to highlight. Quote, "A great deal of work goes on in the present, including initiatives like Pride Month to celebrate different identities and experiences in order to highlight and combat discrimination and bias. Often, more conservative elements of our society will refer to the past to promote ideas of tradition and encourage a return to attitudes that can be restrictive, discriminatory, and sadly even harmful to those who don't fit in with them, particularly around gender binaries and norms. I believe if we look closely at the evidence from the past, we will see diversity and variety and difference. And through celebrating this, we can contribute to a more inclusive world today."
Yeah, nicely said.
Nicely said, Cecilia.
Thank you, Cecilia, for saying it so nicely.
Okay, this is Bone-anza story number 2. Bone-anza story number 2. These are my sources for it. Them.us.com, 2 articles from Wikipedia, and OscarWildeTours.com.
Ooh.
Okay. In 1964, archaeologists in Egypt opened up the tomb of Tutankhamun and Kamhotep. Sorry about the pronunciation, guys. 2 men who lived and died sometime around the year 2380 BCE. Inside, they would discover what might be the oldest queer couple on record.
Oh.
Yeah. So these 2 guys were some ancient Egyptian royal servants. They shared the title of overseer of the manicurist in the palace of the king.
I love it.
Yeah, that's you. You're overseer of the manicurist.
Yeah, I could
guess.
do that.
Yeah, so they lived during the second half of the 25th century BC, and they were buried together at Saqqara and are listed as royal confidants in their joint tomb. And they are notable for their unusual depiction in Egyptian records, often interpreted as the first recorded same-sex couple. So the assumed romantic relationship between them is based on depictions of the 2 men standing nose to nose and embracing. So I'm going to call I'm going to give them little nicknames. I'm going to call them Nia and Crumb.
Sure, why not?
Okay, so Nia's wife is depicted in a banquet scene, but is almost completely erased, and in other pictures of Kamhotep occupies the position for a wife. So in other pictures with the 2 guys, one guy is kind of in the husband's position, and the other guy is painted where the wife usually would be.
Cool.
Yeah. So critics like to argue that the men appear with their wives and their children, and that people think that they are brothers or twins rather than lovers. But I would love to point out that, because gay people never married, straight people in throughout all time. That's never happened.
Right, Sophie, that's never happened.
It's never happened. Only straights marry straights for straight reasons. And not to cover up gayness in a time where maybe it was not accepted or the norm. Anyway, so the tomb of these guys was discovered by Egyptologist Ahmed Musa in the necropolis Saqqara in Egypt in 1964. So it's the only tomb in the necropolis where there are men displayed embracing and holding hands. And in addition, their chosen names, like the names that they created for themselves, the first name, Nia Kahamun, means life belongs to Khnum, and Khnumhotep means Khnum is satisfied. So they basically, one guy's name is like, my life belongs to this guy, and the other guy's name is, I'm chill with that.
And they wouldn't be brothers. No.
They're not. I don't think they're brothers.
They're not brothers.
I don't think they're brothers. I don't kiss my brother.
No.
I don't know about you.
No.
There's not a lot of pictures of me kissing my brother on the mouth.
No, I don't tend to kiss my brother on the mouth.
Because in this tomb, they're depicted as, like, kissing and, like, holding hands and, like, hanging out and standing very close to each other. And their wives and children are also there, but, like, they're, like, in the background. And there aren't any depictions of them kissing their wives.
I was wondering about that. Like, was it allowed? Were people okay with it? Like, what was the deal?
Well, here's the thing. I kind of looked into this a little bit. There are several instances of homosexuality that are kind of in the Egyptian canon. There's some homosexuality in some of the Egyptian lore, like religious lore. And there's also this really great story. It's kind of hard to tell what people's relationships were like because all of the documents and literature that like had stories that had sexy acts in them were depicted in like super flowery language. So it's kind of like if you ever have read an overly done romance novel and he's like, he entered her most private crevice. You're like, are they fucking? I can't. Or did he just put his hand in her armpit? Because that's one of my most private crevices. I don't want anyone there.
That's shocking.
It is. It is shocking. But so there's this story of this king. I keep reading it in my head as King Pepsi. But it's spelled P-E-P-I. But my brain wants to put an S in there.
P-P is what I hear.
King Pepsi.
I think both are wrong.
King Peppy?
Sure. We're 5 years old. Is it
King
Pepsi or
Pee-Pee.
PP? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I might as well just call him King Penis. We're just gonna...
I mean, if you want to
Just
be an
do
adult
that.
about it.
I mean, yeah. No, I apologize to the Egyptian people.
As do I.
So, King Pepi and his general Sassanet. There's this book that tells the story of a bunch of different kings, but there's a chapter in which King Pepe the second, he's the second. There's King Pepsi the first.
Oh, no.
So he visits his general Sassanet. He visits him to have passionate discussions. There's one phrase that people are super obsessed with this king and this general, and the text says, quote, "His Majesty went to Sansonet's house and did to him what His Majesty desired."
Okay. Yeah, we all know what that means, right?
He's doing what he desires, yeah. People think that this is definitely an allusion to them having kind of late night rendezvous to like both talk about like, you know, king and general stuff, but also to like have sex and hang out. And some people who would put the kibosh on this say that it's an allusion to a religious text in which the sun god Ra visits the under god Osiris during the middle 4 hours of the night Thus, King Pepe II would be taking the role of Ra, and Sassanette would be Osiris, and the phrase "doing what one desires" would be, like, just going to visit him. But
in the middle of the night, though?
I think my fingers are up in quotations, he's visiting him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I think it's cool that they were buried together.
Yeah, right?
And that the artist made a rendition of them kissing on the mouth. That seems like it could be progressive. I don't know.
I mean, it's not, like, graphic. Like, there's no tongue.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, 2D flat Egyptian, like, art on a wall. But it's
Is
hot.
there tongue?
No, unfortunately.
I thought you'd like that more. You were, like, disgusted by me.
No, I was sad. I was sad because there wasn't any tongue.
Oh, okay.
But kind of connected, I found a second story about sexy gay generals.
Nice.
That's bone related. Pierre Augereau and Louise Lemonet. They were two of Napoleon's generals.
I was going to say, that sounds French.
Yeah, bitch. They were two of Napoleon's generals, and they're buried together. And there's an inscription on their grave that reads, "Death separated them, now death reunites them."
Oh.
Wow. Which is, like, really romantic. And it's, like, not entirely known whether or not they were a couple, because one of them got married twice, but he's not buried with his wife. Either of them. He's buried with this guy.
Yeah.
And the other guy, he never married and died when he was 85. And it's hard to kind of know whether or not they could be just best friends. But I think that sounds pretty, sounds romantic. Sounds like they were maybe a couple.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
Although for those, I do have to say, those poor wives. Like, I'm sorry, that
sucks.
That's the end of it that's, like, shitty. Oh. But,
I mean, one can only hope that they had their own side pieces.
That's what I'm gonna think and hope it's true.
Yeah, that's what I would like to think, is that they are also gay and are off doing their own thing.
Hey, it's Pride Month. We get to think whatever we want.
Yeah, exactly. Do whatever we want. All right. Let's have another story. Let's hop over to ancient Iran, just for fun. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right. So my sources for this were an article from Haaretz and an article from Wikipedia. So this is about an ancient civilization in Iran that recognized a third gender consistently in their society.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. So there's a civilization in Persia that may have embraced diversity of gender by recognizing its existence through burial, which we love. We love burial. So this theory is kind of based on a study of this archaeological site, Hassanlu, which is a pretty famous historical site that we'll get into a little later in this story. But just for now, Hassanlu is a low-lying mound close to Iran's border with Turkey and Iraq, and was excavated extensively by the University of Pennsylvania in like the 1940s and 50s. But now we've got this new study being done that really shakes up assumptions made by archaeologists about the sex and gender of some of these remains. And this also kind of highlights how many non-Western societies, both in like the past and present, have a non-binary view of gender. So human remains were found in this archaeological dig, and researchers assigned them, either this is all covered in air quotes, biologically female or biologically male, and based on the morphology of their skeleton or by grave goods, kind of like we talked about at the top. And Megan Cifarelli is an art historian from Manhattanville College, and she is kind of integral in this study. And she said that, quote, embedded in the use of predetermined categories is the assumption that being male or female meant the same thing a long time ago as it does today. I think that's a really interesting thought, that even, even these quote, these binaries of male and female are not, as clear cut as we would see them in the modern world, So her goal was to eliminate this kind of modern bias by taking artifacts found at these 51 tombs that they uncovered in Hassanlu. They're grouping the objects that appear more frequently together and trying to figure out what that could mean. So they're not basing it on like, these are male, these are female. They're going, okay, these objects appear together, that's a group. These objects appear together, that's a group. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
Cifarelli presented her results at the annual meeting of the American Schools of, I don't love this, the American Schools of Oriental Research. Just change that. I hope in Denver.
Yeah. I don't think you're supposed to say Oriental. Like, I don't think that's
I don't think so either. Yeah, I think that's an antiquated phrase.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you could use it, but it's been twisted and taken over by racists.
Yeah, they should change that.
Yeah, okay, we're agreed.
Anyway, so one cluster of artifacts that appears together includes needles, garment pins, jewelry, and was associated and tended to be found in graves associated with stereotypically, quote-unquote, biologically female skeletons. Another cluster was objects like metal vessels, weapons, and armor, which tended to be found in the graves of skeletons that bear biologically male markers. But there was another cluster of items. There was another, section of skeletons that contained both of these items, like both kinds of these items.
Okay. Male and like female, to use their terminology.
Yeah.
Items.
Exactly. There was a tomb that had a male bone marker skeleton in it that had an arrowhead, but also a garment pin, which is a item that was held in this society as being very feminine. So very interesting. And this group made up about 20% of the graves. This group that had mixed artifacts.
Cool.
Yeah, I love this. Another one had a blade, a metal drinking cup, also a garment pin, and a needle. Also, these remains wore feminine dress. So they had, some badass weapons, and they were looking hella cute in a nice dress.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, and it's great because this particular skeleton does not have a pelvis, so we don't know. Without the pelvis, you can tell from the skull, but the pelvis is kind of the most important bit. But there's a large amount of these graves where they have been disturbed in some way, so some of the bones are missing.
If you took a pelvis from a tomb, I need you to give it back.
Yeah.
Okay?
I don't... That's grave robbing.
That's weird. That's, sick. Ugh.
Yeah. Ugh.
I mean, I'm sure somebody didn't just take a pelvis. I'm trying to be weird and funny, but that's...
No, I agree with you.
Why is that missing,
I don't know. People are weird. So, through her study, this art historian theorizes that because of these three different distinct, types of groupings of objects, that this culture recognized at least three genders.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think there is some historical context for that, too. I've heard of some societies that have long held the belief that there's not just two genders. But I can't name any off the top of my head.
Well, that's why we need to, do stuff like this and, bring up more ancient gays.
Yeah. New goal of this podcast.
Bring up more ancient gays.
Yes.
So the people of Hassanlu did not have, written we don't have a lot of examples of their written culture, and we don't have any literature from that time, but we do have art from that time. And they found this golden bowl at this site that depicts a bearded man wearing feminine clothing shown sitting on the floor in a position that the iconography in this kind of art usually represents like women. And she thinks that this may be a artistic representation of a non-binary person. And this is like 3,000 years old. This is a 3,000-year-old representation of a non-binary person. I think that's so important.
Very important, very cool. Also, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, right? Hassan-Lu is amazing. We're going to get into it a little bit, and I promise you, boneheads, I absolutely promise you we will talk more about Hassan-Lu. But this is very interesting because, so, Hassan-Lu is in the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, was really pumping, was like a really prosperous city that was doing really well, but it was kind of in the middle of two like neighboring contested powers, where you have the Assyrian Empire on one side and the Urartu kingdom on the other side, which is now in like Turkey, Armenia. And Hassan-Lu is kind of known as the Pompeii of the Near East because around 800 BCE, the city was completely destroyed by the Arthurians, and the conquerors massacred everybody and burned the whole city to the ground.
Oh, God. That's horrible. I thought you were going to say another volcano.
Well, it left a layer of destruction and dozens of skeletons that are perfectly preserved by ash and rubble. And one of the most interesting sets of remains found at Hassan-Lu is the Hassan-Lu lovers.
Okay.
So these are two human skeletons that are, let me show you. I'll send you a picture here. They are lovers. They're lovers in love.
Oh my God. They really are like kissing skeletons.
Yeah. So they're two people who are, like Katelyn said, they look like they're kissing. And
not only that, one is like grabbing the other's face.
Yeah. It's a passionate looking kiss. And that's hard to tell with just bones.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that.
But these skeletons are both male. Or their skeletal morphology is what would be assumed biologically male. You know, people feel free to get on my case about my phrasing. I just want to make sure everyone feels included and seen. So these two human skeletons were excavated together in a pit, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's assumed that they were embracing at the time of their death. So there were approximately around 246 skeletons that were found at the site together, and this pair were found at the bottom of this hole with no other objects around them except for a stone slab that was under the head of one of the skeletons, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what happened.
Yeah, they died together around 800 BC during the destruction of Hassan-Lu, and both skeletons show no injuries near the time of death, but it's possible that they died of asphyxiation. And people argue that, you know, the gendering of the skeletons is off, or that they were just friends, or that they were brothers, you know, the usual bullshit people throw at it. But I challenge you, listener, to look at this picture and tell me these skeletons are not macking for the last time before they die.
It's kind of what it looks like to me, too.
So I have one last story to round out our mini queer bonanza.
Yes.
And this is less of an archaeological thing and more of just a cool piece of bone-related queer art. So I'm going to send you another picture for my last bonanza item.
Oh, this is like it's not a sarcophagus, but it's like a piece of art on top of somebody's grave. What do you call this?
A monument.
A monument, yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like it's made of marble, and it's two people, like, lying in each other's arms passionately in a cemetery.
Yeah, it's two ladies. This piece is called Memorial to a Marriage. And
Oh.
and I'll tell you right now, both of those ladies are still alive.
Oh, but they have a monument in a graveyard.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, here's the story behind it. So this sculpture was made by the American artist Patricia Corin in 2004, and it's a depiction of her and her partner, who is also an artist. Her name is Deborah Cass, and they're lying in bed embracing each other. And in 2004, when the bronze version of this was made, same-sex marriage was illegal in the United States. And at the time, the only way that the two artists' relationship would be seen as legal or recognized was through documents such as wills and healthcare provisions that would only be enacted at the time of either of their deaths.
Oh, whoa.
So their relationship, before the legalization of gay marriage, their relationship would only be recognized through their deaths.
So they made art about that.
Yeah, they certainly
Wow.
did. So Memorial to a Marriage was for Cronin's personal burial plot in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. So for the moment, it is in the originals in Woodlawn Cemetery, but it has been, other copies of it have been made and put into exhibition all around the world. And in one exhibition, the artist said, quote, "The statue addresses issues of lesbian invisibility, gay marriage, love and loss, power and status. In this sculpture, I choose a nationalist form, 19th century American neoclassic sculpture, to address what I consider a federal failure. In death, I will make official my marriage, which is not legal when we are alive."
Oh my God, am I spoiling anything? Please tell me they got married.
On the 24th of July, 2011, same-sex marriage was legalized in the state of New York, and they were married on the same day.
Yes! Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, thank God.
Mm-hmm. Today, the sculpture is the first and only marriage equality monument in the world, and you can go and see it free of charge in the Woodlawn Cemetery. So Cronin granted permission for Memorial to Marriage to be featured as part of a Glasgow Museum's new online school topic, LGBTQ plus histories and experiences. And I just wanted to end with this quote from Laura Bald, who is like the curator of this LGBT collection. And she's talking about what it means to have this piece in their collection. And she says, quote, "I have seen the faces of LGBTQ plus young people light up when suddenly they realize there is something in the museum that represents them. And there are many visitors passing by who, after their initial double take, choose to stop, engage, and reflect over the sleeping bronze forms of Cronin and Cass. Those visitors become witness, not just to a powerful memorial to marriage equality, but to a monument of the beauty of same-sex love and the importance of making this visible."
Beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. I love that they were like, you know me, it's a combination of two things I love: romantic lesbians and making your headstone before you die.
Well, and just making art so personal, but also so political. Yeah, it's beautiful. Really cool.
Yeah. So that was the mini Bone-anza I made for you.
I loved it.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Well, we've done it again. We've done
We've
another
done
episode.
it again.
Huh.
Like, oh, Katelyn, you've done it again. You shouldn't have. You really shouldn't have.
What a special episode. Thanks for listening to our Pride episode. Happy Pride, Boneheads.
Yeah. Happy Pride, Boneheads, to all of the queer boneheads and the ally boneheads. You know, come take a look at these pictures. They're going to be up on the old Instagram and on the website. I don't know if you want to drop us a message about your favorite bone story. Please go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we're always looking for new topics. This is a wide topic, so you can really go a lot of directions with it, as we know. So if you're itching to hear something, shoot it our way.
Yeah. And take a minute to appreciate your bones. They hold you up, and they hold all your organs in.
Thank you, Bones.
Thank you, Bones. All right, well, I guess there's only one more thing to do. Bon voyage! Oh,
Sexy.
one day we'll get it. All right, love you, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter,
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
at Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe. God damn it, Mary, wash your fucking hands!